Hello ladies and welcome to the channel. Some women are born to be followed, but the rarest ones, they walk alone and the world can barely keep up. In a world that thrives on labels, stereotypes, and the comfort of predictability, there exists a woman who defies it all, the Sigma female. She's not the damsel, not the queen, not the submissive follower, nor the dominant leader. She's something else entirely. A force of nature who moves through life on her own terms, leaving those who dare to know her both captivated and terrified. But why, in a modern age that celebrates strong women, do 97% of men find themselves hating this rare, enigmatic creature? What is it about her quiet power and relentless independence that sends shockwaves through the male psyche? Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the mind of the Sigma female, unpredictable, unstoppable, and misunderstood, and uncover why she shakes the very core of modern masculinity. Number 1. Her silence speaks volumes. Her silence speaks volumes, and it's more powerful than any loud declaration could ever be. In a world where people often feel the need to fill every moment with words, explanations, or excuses, the Sigma female knows the value of saying nothing. This silence isn't passive or shy, it's deliberate and controlled. She understands that in the quiet, there's strength. It forces people to confront their own thoughts, insecurities, and assumptions. For men who are used to dominating conversations or gaining attention with their words, her silence can be unnerving. When a Sigma female chooses to remain quiet, she doesn't do it because she has nothing to say. She does it because she knows when it's not worth speaking. She doesn't need to argue, doesn't need to defend herself, and she certainly doesn't need to justify her thoughts or actions to anyone. Her silence creates an aura of mystery that drives men crazy. They wonder what she's thinking, what she's holding back, and why she's not reacting the way they expect her to. This lack of predictability gives her an undeniable edge. Her silence is also a form of communication. It's a response that tells someone when they've overstepped, when she's disinterested, or when she's simply observing. Men, especially those who are used to more obvious reactions, find themselves off balance in these moments. They're left guessing, trying to decipher the meaning behind her stillness, and often end up overthinking. The quietness becomes louder than words ever could, amplifying their own insecurities and uncertainties. For some men, this unspoken power is maddening. They thrive on feedback, whether positive or negative, but with the Sigma female, they get neither. Her silence leaves them in a void, forcing them to confront themselves in ways they're not used to, and that's a power few know how to handle. Number 2, her purpose isn't tied to the relationship. Her purpose isn't tied to the relationship, and that's where everything changes. Most people are accustomed to the idea that a woman's identity and purpose are deeply intertwined with her romantic life. Men, in particular, often assume that a woman's happiness depends on the relationship, on being cared for, provided for, or validated by a partner. But the Sigma female, she disrupts this entire narrative. Her purpose comes from within, driven by her personal goals, ambitions, and passions. While she can love deeply and commit to someone, it's never the center of her universe. Her relationship is a part of her life, not the defining feature of it. For many men, this is unsettling. They've been conditioned to believe that being a protector or provider is a key aspect of their role in a relationship. Yet with a Sigma female, that dynamic doesn't exist. She doesn't them in the traditional sense. She's perfectly capable of handling life on her own. She wants a partner, not a savior, and that subtle difference is profound. It can leave men feeling unsure of their place, confused about how to contribute, and sometimes even resentful that they aren't needed in the usual ways. Her independence doesn't reject love, but it challenges the conventional power structure that many men are used to. And for some, that's enough to stir discomfort, frustration, and even hate. Number 3, she sees through facades. She sees through facades, and it's one of her most disarming traits. Most people wear masks, whether it's the confident leader, the charming flirt, or the laid-back guy who doesn't seem to care. These are all carefully constructed images people use to navigate social situations. For many men, these personas are essential to how they function in relationships and the world. But for a Sigma female, none of these masks work. She doesn't fall for surface-level charm or bravado. She sees past all of it, cutting right to the core of who someone truly is. This ability to read people goes beyond just intuition. It's a combination of sharp observation and a refusal to be distracted by the usual games people play. She notices the subtle inconsistencies, the way someone's words don't match their actions, or how their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. She picks up on the smallest clues, the brief moments of vulnerability or hesitation that reveal what's real beneath the surface. And this unnerves men who rely on their crafted image to engage with others. To those who thrive on maintaining a persona, she's a threat. Men who are used to charming their way into relationships or controlling the narrative find themselves powerless in front of her. She doesn't play along, doesn't get swept up in the image they project, and this leaves them feeling exposed. Her ability to see through them creates a sense of vulnerability they aren't prepared to handle. They can't fool her, and that's what makes her so dangerous to their ego. It's not just about her seeing the truth. It's about how that truth strips away the control they thought they had, leaving them raw and unsure of how to proceed. For many, this is too much to bear, and it sparks a resentment they can't shake. Number 4. A quiet confidence that dwarfs loud bravado. A quiet confidence defines the Sigma female, and it's unlike anything most people are used to. In a society where boldness is often mistaken for strength, her calm, steady self-assurance sets her apart. She doesn't need to be the loudest in the room or dominate conversations to make her presence felt. Her confidence comes from within, rooted in who she is and what she stands for. This kind of quiet power unnerves people, especially men who equate strength with volume or bravado. The Sigma female doesn't seek attention, yet it naturally gravitates toward her. She doesn't need validation from others because she already knows her worth. This is where she differs from many others, who often rely on external praise or recognition to feel confident. For her, confidence isn't something she has to prove. It's simply who she is. She doesn't perform or feel the need to project a certain image, and that authenticity is both rare and intimidating. Men, particularly those who build their identity around being seen as strong or powerful, struggle to handle this. Her quiet confidence overshadows their loud displays of dominance. While they're trying to impress or assert themselves, she remains unbothered, steady in her own skin. It's disarming because they can't figure out how to compete with someone who doesn't care about winning in the first place. This kind of quiet confidence is a mirror. It reflects back the insecurities of those who try to overshadow it with noise. The more they try to prove themselves, the more obvious it becomes that they're seeking something she doesn't need, external approval. And that's where the frustration builds. Her confidence isn't loud, but it speaks louder than any words or actions ever could, leaving men feeling dwarfed by its quiet strength. Number 5, doesn't chase, doesn't flee, she just walks away. The Sigma female doesn't chase, doesn't flee, she just walks away. And that simple act holds a quiet power that many struggle to understand. In a world where people are constantly caught up in the push and pull of relationships, she refuses to participate. When faced with a situation that doesn't serve her, or when someone tries to manipulate her emotions, she doesn't argue, fight, or plead. She simply removes herself. There's no drama, no grand exit, just a calm decision to step away, leaving behind confusion and sometimes even desperation. This ability to walk away is what truly sets her apart. Most people, especially in romantic situations, get tangled up in cycles of chasing or avoiding, either constantly pursuing someone's attention or running from commitment or confrontation. But the Sigma female operates on a different level. She doesn't chase after affection or validation, nor does she avoid confrontation by fleeing. If a relationship, a conversation, or a dynamic isn't aligned with her values or desires, she walks away with grace, not looking back. Men who are used to playing the game of chase find this baffling. They expect women to react a certain way, to either cling to their attention or distance themselves in predictable patterns. But when the Sigma female doesn't respond, doesn't fight to keep them or push them away, it throws them off balance. Her detachment isn't coldness, it's self-respect. She values herself enough to know when to leave, And that ability to detach so effortlessly can be devastating for those who rely on power dynamics to maintain control. Her refusal to engage leaves men feeling powerless. She's not rejecting them in a way that invites pursuit, nor is she fleeing in a way that suggests fear. She's simply done, and that finality can be both humbling and infuriating. Number 6. Refusal to play the power game. The Sigma female's refusal to play the power game is one of her most defining characteristics, and it throws people off balance. In relationships, especially between men and women, there's often an unspoken tug-of-war for control. Whether it's through dominance, manipulation, or even subtle forms of influence, power plays are everywhere. But the Sigma female doesn't engage in any of it. She's not interested in gaining the upper hand or submitting to someone else's will. For her, the entire concept of playing power games feels unnecessary, even absurd. This refusal to engage is incredibly disruptive to men who are used to traditional power dynamics. They're accustomed to navigating relationships through a balance of push and pull, expecting a certain level of competition or negotiation. But with the Sigma female, they find none of that. She doesn't fight for control, nor does she allow herself to be controlled. Her approach is simple. She'll walk away before she lets herself be drawn into any kind of manipulative or controlling situation. It's not about winning or losing for her. It's about living authentically, without the need to play someone else's game. This lack of interest in power struggles is deeply unsettling for many men. It leaves them confused, unsure of how to interact with her. They can't dominate her, they can't manipulate her, and they can't charm her into giving up her independence. She operates on her own terms, unaffected by the usual strategies people use to gain control in relationships. And for men who thrive on the feeling of power or the need to assert dominance, this is incredibly frustrating. They don't know how to navigate a dynamic where there's no game to be won, and that sense of losing control makes them feel powerless in ways they've never experienced before. Number 7. Unpredictability that shakes the core. The unpredictability of the Sigma female is something that shakes men to their core. In a world where most people follow predictable patterns of behavior, especially in relationships, she's the one who breaks the mold. You can't pin her down, can't guess what her next move will be, and that level of unpredictability can be deeply unsettling. Men, in particular, often prefer a sense of control, or at least an understanding of what's coming next. They feel more secure when they can anticipate how a woman will react, what she'll want, or how she'll behave in certain situations. But with the Sigma female, none of that applies. Her choices aren't based on what others expect or want from her. They're rooted entirely in her own desires and values. One moment she might be deeply engaged in a relationship, and the next, she's walking away without any drama or second thoughts. She doesn't follow the traditional relationship script, where emotions are predictable and roles are predefined. This keeps men constantly guessing, never quite able to settle into a pattern with her. They can't rely on the usual signals because she doesn't send them. She doesn't play hard to get, nor does she chase after anyone, and this unpredictability makes her impossible to control. What makes her even more disarming is that her unpredictability isn't random, it's intentional. She lives her life with purpose and makes decisions that align with her values, even if they don't make sense to those around her. This leaves men feeling destabilized, unsure of where they stand or how to approach her. That lack of certainty shakes the foundations of how they're used to interacting with women, forcing them to either adapt or be left in a state of confusion and frustration. For some, that unpredictability is too much to handle. Number 8. The woman who exists outside the system. The Sigma female is the woman who exists outside the system, and that's what makes her so difficult for many to grasp. Society is built on categories. People are placed into neat boxes that define who they are, how they should behave, and what they should want out of life. Men and women are expected to follow certain scripts, whether it's the idea that a woman should be nurturing, dependent, or constantly seeking approval from others. But the Sigma female doesn't fit into any of these molds. She lives according to her own rules, completely unconcerned with the expectations society has placed on her. For men who are used to dealing with women who follow the typical path, Whether that's seeking validation, craving security, or relying on traditional roles, the Sigma female is a mystery. She's not interested in conforming to these roles, nor is she rebelling against them for the sake of rebellion. She simply doesn't acknowledge the system at all. She exists in a space where labels like alpha or beta don't apply, where the conventional measures of success, attractiveness, or femininity are irrelevant. This independence from societal expectations is what truly sets her apart. To many men, this makes her both fascinating and unsettling. She doesn't need a relationship to define her, a man to validate her, or a social structure to give her purpose. She operates entirely outside of the systems that most people rely on to make sense of the world. And because she's so self-contained, she can't be easily categorized, understood, or controlled. This makes her a threat to the traditional dynamics that men are often comfortable with, leaving them unsure of how to approach her, and ultimately leading some to resent her for simply being different. Number 9. She challenges the provider mindset. The Sigma female challenges the provider mindset, and that's a disruption many men struggle to handle. Traditionally, the role of a man in a relationship has been closely tied to being a provider, financially, emotionally, and otherwise. This role is often intertwined with a man's sense of identity and self-worth. The idea is that men prove their value through their ability to take care of their partner, offering security, stability, and support. However, the Sigma female's approach to life and relationships directly undermines this conventional expectation. She's independent and self-sufficient, which means she doesn't need to rely on a man for financial support, emotional validation, or any form of security. Her life is built on her own terms, with her own achievements and goals. For men who see their role as providing and protecting, this self-reliance can be both confusing and threatening. She doesn't require a man to complete her life or fulfill her needs. She's already whole on her own. This challenges the very foundation of how many men see themselves within a relationship. If a man's value is traditionally measured by his ability to provide, then the Sigma female's independence puts his role into question. She doesn't need his support to thrive, which can lead to a feeling of being unnecessary or undervalued. This realization forces men to confront their own insecurities about their role and self-worth. They are faced with the stark reality that their traditional notions of masculinity and value might be outdated or insufficient for someone who doesn't conform to those roles. For some men, this challenge is difficult to accept. It forces them to reevaluate their place in a relationship and their sense of identity. It's not just that she doesn't need their provision. It's that her self-sufficiency forces them to question the entire framework of how they measure their worth and role in a partnership. Number 10. A disinterest in validation strips away their armor. A disinterest in validation strips away the armor of many men, and this is where the Sigma female wields her quiet power. In relationships, people often seek validation, confirmation that they are valued, attractive, or necessary. For many men, this need for validation can become a driving force. They crave the reassurance that their efforts are appreciated, their presence desired. They often rely on this validation to boost their ego and maintain a sense of self-worth. But the Sigma female's complete disinterest in this kind of validation turns this dynamic on its head. She doesn't seek approval or validation from anyone, and that's a concept that men, particularly those who thrive on being admired, find hard to understand. Her self-worth doesn't come from external sources. She doesn't need praise or acknowledgement to feel secure in who she is. Because of this, she doesn't react to compliments or attempts to flatter her in the way most people do. This lack of neediness is both freeing and terrifying for those who are used to gaining confidence from others' opinions. For men who rely on validation to gauge their success in a relationship, her indifference is disorienting. They can't use flattery or charm to win her over, because she isn't swayed by those tactics. This forces them to confront their own insecurities and question their own methods of interaction. Her lack of interest in validation reveals how much they depend on it for their own self-esteem, and this realization can be jarring. It's not just that she's different. It's that her indifference exposes the vulnerabilities and superficialities in the men who seek to impress her, leaving them feeling uncomfortably naked and unmoored. In a landscape dominated by familiar roles and expectations, the Sigma female stands as a powerful anomaly. Her ability to live outside the traditional systems, combined with her quiet confidence and disinterest in validation, presents a challenge to many men who are accustomed to established dynamics of power and dependence. She doesn't chase or conform, she simply walks away when something doesn't align with her values, leaving behind a trail of disorientation and frustration for those who try to fit her into their pre-existing molds. Her unpredictability and refusal to play the power game further unsettle those who rely on conventional strategies to navigate relationships. She is a force that defies easy categorization, revealing the vulnerabilities and insecurities of those who seek to control or manipulate. In essence, the Sigma female forces a reckoning with outdated notions of masculinity and relationships, challenging men to reconsider what they value and how they interact with the world. As she continues to defy norms and expectations, the Sigma female remains an enigma, powerful in her independence and elusive in her authenticity. For many, she represents both an ideal and an idealized challenge, a reminder that the conventional scripts of relationships and self-worth are constantly evolving. Embracing her presence demands a new understanding of strength, identity, and connection, making her a significant, if often misunderstood, force in the modern world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of the Sigma female, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our tribe. Stay tuned for more insights and discussions that challenge the norm and celebrate the extraordinary. Thanks for watching.